we never pay attention to a state attorney general race, right? Like that's not really something we cover at the national level. But this one's very telling because it's a statement on the Democratic Party in today's day and age, in the wake of Charlie's assassination and the growing threats and attempts on the lives of Republicans. This guy running for attorney general, the Democrat, dreams and fantasizes and waxes poetic about shooting his Republican rivals in the head with 2 bullets. And not just that, but their children too, gleefully discussing the possibility of watching them die in their mother's arms. And then triples it down on it when chastised by a Republican colleague saying, you sound like a monster. What are you saying? Stop that. I'm uncomfortable. Doesn't even take the hint. Goes back repeatedly to say, no, you need to hear me out. This is why I'm right. They'll never change their policy positions unless they feel the pain. And it's not a rhetorical use of that phrase. It's, I want their children dead. And there's a couple things I want to point out on this. So that Democrat is named Jay Jones. He's challenging the incumbent, Jason Miyares, for the position. And Jay Jones had been winning prior to this scandal breaking. Now it's neck and neck. And Tucker had on a Virginia state delegate named Terry Kilgore, I think yesterday, and he put some perspective on just why, in addition to the obvious, Jay Jones's texts were so abhorrent. Listen here to SOT 14.
The General Assembly all the time. Everybody knew the Gilbert kids, and Jay Jones would have known the Gilbert kids. That's what's terrible about this whole situation. It wasn't like, hey, I want to kill a kid who's from another country. You would know these kids, because you're around the General Assembly. I talked to him this past week just to check on him. And the bad thing about it is now there has to be police presence where his kids are. And that's what's because they still receive threats.
It's amazing that Jay Jones, who wants to be the top law enforcement official of the Commonwealth of Virginia, directly put those children in danger, directly put their lives in danger. And just one more for you, Victor. This is Jason Miyares, the Republican and incumbent, raising some of those same points last night at the debate to his opponent, Jay Jones, SOT 13.
I have to make this observation. He keeps saying that he is sorry. Jay, if you're really sorry, you wouldn't be running. If you really understood the ramifications of what you said about an innocent mom and her children, you know Todd Gilbert. You've served with him. Jennifer would come to the General Assembly. She would bring her children. We would see them run in the hallways. They were 2 and 5 years old at the time. This wasn't a hypothetical. This wasn't some figure that you know from far away. You actually know Todd. This is a flesh and blood, real husband. Jennifer is a real mom. These are real kids. How in the world could you ever show compassion and comfort a grieving mother that has ever lost a child to violence? Because Virginians, there is no cry like the cry of a mother that has lost her child. A prosecutor knows this because they've stood in that courtroom. Jay Jones has never understood this because he's not a prosecutor. He's a politician trying to save his career.
And what we heard from Jay Jones, and I'll play some of the sound, Victor, after you weigh in, but was basically, I'm sorry for the texts. I don't stand by those sentiments. And Donald Trump is bad, and I'm the only one who will fight Donald Trump, the evil Donald Trump. This guy won't do it.
Yeah, I think when you had these left-wing funded campaigns for attorney generals, it was actually really brilliant what George Soros did. He said to himself, if you really want to change America, you want to get attorney generals and local prosecutors because they can most directly influence the culture by letting criminals out, not indicting them or not sentencing them or letting them out on amnesties. And they went out and picked the most left-wing radical people, whether it was Keith Ellison in Minnesota or Letitia James or Mr. Jones. And when you do that, you get this other baggage, like you do with Letitia Jones and Keith Ellison and Jay Jones. And there was what was even, it wasn't as bad, but in some ways it was even more glaring in a sense, was he didn't drive 80 miles an hour, or he didn't drive 85, he didn't drive 90, he didn't drive 100, he didn't drive 105. How many people, Megyn, have you ever met drove 116 miles an hour? That deliberately was saying to people, I'm going to drive this fast, and if anybody is in my way, or they're going to be dead, and I don't care. And then when he was sentenced, he used his own PAC or this thing that was related to him for the community service. So everything
Right.
about
It wasn't real
is-
community service.
No, it wasn't. Everything about him is distasteful. He's trying to be he reminds me of Mondami. He's trying to smile and be smug, but he never comes to terms that the state, as you say, that the head law enforcement officer of Virginia is telling the people of Virginia, I have threatened to kill people. I would like people to be dead, little children, and I have driven 116 miles an hour. And anybody else who did that would be in jail for a year for reckless endangerment, etc., felony. And I didn't have any consequences really at all. In fact, I used that sentence for my own political advantage. It's disgusting that
He has
he's
no
even on the
respect
stage.
for the rule of law.
No.
He's made that clear. That did come up, that incident, the reckless driving incident last night. Here's Meares raising the issue in SOP 15.
The reality is that Jay Jones was in court for going 116 miles an hour on Interstate 64. 4 people were in court that day, were going roughly the same speed. 3 of those 4 people got suspended or active jail sentence. But Jay Jones is a politician, and he asked the court not to give him any of that, to give him community service. And instead, we now know he misled the court. That community service, it wasn't done for a charity. It was done for his own political action committee that he controlled. Jay, if you were to apply to be a line prosecutor in not just my office, any attorney general office in the country, you would not pass a background check. And right now, you may say that you are sorry. But look back at what happened. You had 3 years to say you're sorry, Jay, and you didn't.
That's very effective to me. I'm just going to say one thing. Jason Meares got an issue with the hair. It's like greased down. It looks kind of greased down and smushed to his head. I'm sorry. I'm rooting for him, but it looks a little like off, a little smarmy. Someone needs to do something about that, because women do respond to things like hair, and that needs an intervention. I don't know what maybe they're too afraid to tell him. I'm not too afraid to tell you, sir. You need to get rid of some of that oil out of the hair, gel, whatever you're doing. You've overdone it. It's okay if it's like a little fluffy. You went too far, but your rhetorical points are excellent.
Yeah, I think as of somebody who's bald, we don't, men that are bald think, I'll take it, well, no matter what it looks like. At least it's hair. But there's a larger trend, and I have to be very careful what I say here, but when you look at Letitia James and her racialized campaign and her various houses that she had, or you look at Mondami, he's a multimillionaire from a multimillionaire family, and you look at Jones, who's from an old, wealthy, established African-American family, and you look at the year 2025, when race and class are divergent now, there's no real connection. So what we're talking about is very affluent people like James, like Mondami, like Jones. And at some point, they all play the ethnic card. He did he talked about all of these civil rights things, and he couldn't do this. And Mondami's talking about the poor Muslims, and Letitia James is talking about a white Donald Trump doing this. And I think most people are saying, you know what? Whether I look at The View or Oprah or Michelle Obama, I'm tired of equating race with persecution and bias and poverty. In fact, we've been 60 years into the civil rights and affirmative action, which is a prototype of DI, and there's very little connection anymore with a lot of ethnic groups and social oppression, poverty, white bias, if at all. So you get this really ridiculous Orwellian where these very wealthy, privileged people get up on the stage and then they start self-referencing their victim status. And they all do it in a different degree. Mondami does it all the time. And so does Letitia James. And he did it with about his family's work. And I honor that. I honor that, all that. But he's not a victim any more than Cory Booker is a victim, even any more than Jasmine Crockett, the prep school girl, is a victim. And I think people just have to just say that. And say, we are tired as Americans of all different backgrounds of these people who are the most privileged 2%, 5%, 1% of the country, and then they make us feel as if we owe them something because their religion or their gender or their sexual orientation or their skin hue is not of the majority, and therefore they deserve special consideration or exemption for what they do or say. And that's what the subtext is. All of these people think, I don't need to be judged by the way most people are judged, because I have extenuating circumstances. I'm a proud Lakita James black woman. I'm Mandami, who came from Africa, and I'm a Muslim, and you don't go to the mosque. And same thing with Keith Ellison. All of them do it. And yet they're all very privileged, and we're supposed to go along with this farce. And I think that's one reason people are getting very, very sick of it. And I hope it's
I'm
come
dying to
an
show
end.
you the Michelle Obama sound bites. It's everything in me to not run them right now, but we're on the Virginia debate, so I'm going to hold them. But just put a pin in that exact thought that you just expressed, because it's the perfect tee up to what we're going to play from her. But before we get to her, let's stick with the debate. I do want to show Jay Jones. First, he apologizes for the texts, and here is how that sounded. SOT 11.
Now tonight, you're going to hear two very different visions for the future of this Commonwealth. And you're also going to hear from my opponent about text messages that I sent that I deeply, deeply regret. Let me be very clear. I am ashamed. I am embarrassed. And I'm sorry. I am sorry to Speaker Gilbert. I'm sorry to his family. I'm sorry to my family. And I'm sorry to every single Virginian. I cannot take back what I said. But you have my word that I will always be accountable for my mistakes. This race has always been about more. It's always been about each and every one of you and the future of this Commonwealth. Because when Donald Trump fires workers, defunds our schools, and levies tariffs that destroy our regional economies, sends armed troops into cities and defunds law enforcement, he has a willing cheerleader here in Jason Miyares.
Okay. So that was number one. Now he's deeply sorry. But his first response when this text message scandal broke was not to say, I am so sorry and I'm so embarrassed. I don't even know what to say. I'm humiliated. It was to attack Donald Trump. That's what his initial instinct was. He was like, Donald Trump is this and my opponent sucks and I will not be brought down by this kind of whatever. And it wasn't until shortly thereafter that clearly his team got to him and said, no, not it. There's only one right thing to do, and that is to apologize, that he then issued a sheepish like, oh, and by the way, I'm sorry for my texts. Now, by the time he gets to the debate, he knows he needs to genuinely sound sheepish. And he then says, my party held me accountable. How? Literally, no one's called for him to step down. No one has withdrawn their endorsement, most notably not the woman running for governor above him, Abigail Spanberger. No one's calling for accountability. And that was raised, and this is how that went. SOT 12.
Why should voters trust your judgment moving forward?
Well, look, Brett, I want to say one thing. Jason Miyares can't prosecute a case against Donald Trump, that's for sure. And I will also say this. I was held accountable by my party, and I deeply, deeply respect that. But what about when Donald Trump used incendiary language to incite a riot to try to overturn an election here in this country? What about when Winsome Sears used violent language about people who disagree with you and her and your extreme position on abortion? I've taken accountability for my mistakes. It's time you take accountability too.
And let me ask you just one more time, Delegate Jones, just so we're clear and the voters understand, why do you think they should trust your judgment based upon these two events that we've discussed?
I've taken accountability for my mistakes, and I know that people in Virginia right now demand and deserve leaders who accept when they make mistakes and can acknowledge that and have been held accountable. This job right now demands someone who will hold Donald Trump accountable.
And Jason Miyares got up there and said, how have you held yourself accountable? If you were holding yourself accountable, you would have dropped out of this race, because you cannot possibly get this job and sit with the parents of murdered children, which unfortunately is part of being in law enforcement, and have anybody trust you that you actually feel any sort of empathy for them, especially if they're Republicans, since your thoughts are in writing. And by the way, Victor, I did pull up the original statement that he gave when National Review broke this story. First, he ignored repeated requests for a comment, then later put out a statement blaming Miyares and Trump. Quote, like all people, I've sent text messages that I regret, and I believe violent rhetoric has no place in our politics. But let's be clear about what is happening in the attorney general race right now. Jason Miyares is dropping smears through Trump-controlled media organizations, that'll be news to the folks at NR, to assault my character and rescue his desperate campaign. This race is about whether Trump can control Virginia or Virginians control Virginia. And it was only until later that he put out an actual apology. That's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, we know he didn't mean it because he just said, I've taken responsibility, but basically what I said, wanting the death of small children in the arms of their mother, is not as bad as my opponent because he agrees with half the country, Donald Trump, and he voted with half the country, and he likes what Donald Trump is doing with basically half the country. And therefore, that in itself is as bad as what I've done. The worst thing about it was the whole context of why he said that was because the Speaker of the legislature it was in the process of commemorating an African-American legislator who had died, as I recall. And so I think the people out there would think, well, if somebody tries to be ecumenical and healing in racial affairs and wants to have a resolution honoring a person, and this guy, the Attorney General, then attacks him in a way, how is he going to treat me as a Virginian when I have a legal problem or I'm indicted and his attorneys will take orders from him? Is he going to give me what could I do to win his approval? If somebody who had praised a deceased African-American iconic legislator earned that from him, how would that affect me as a Virginian? So, and then they could also say, if I go 90, are they going to press charges against me? Can I apply for, I don't know, community service with my own organization? That's what he's the chief law enforcement officer, and he has zero credibility. And he really doesn't feel at all bad about it. He feels bad that he got caught. And you made a good point. Anybody that knows National Review, and I wrote there for 21 years, I was working for them, they were the most anti-Trump vehicle as much as anybody on the left for years. So the idea that this is some Trump news organization, the whole thing is demagoguery, and he reminds me a lot of Mondami. And
buy gold and get free silver. That's right. For every $5,000 purchased from Birch Gold Group this month in advance of Veterans Day, they're going to send you a free patriotic silver round that commemorates the Gadsden and American flags. Look, gold is up over 40% since the beginning of this year, and Birch Gold can help you own it by converting an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Plus, they will send you free silver honoring our veterans on qualifying purchases. And if you are current or former military, Birch Gold has a special offer just for you. They are waiving custodial fees for the first year on investments of any amount. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, consider diversifying your savings into gold. Just text MK to the number 989898 for a free info kit and to claim your eligibility for free silver with qualifying purchase before the end of the month. Okay, before the end of the month. Again, text MK to the number 989898. Message and data rates may apply. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.